Wow, hi. Hello to everybody. And yes, I'm supposed to say thank you for inviting me, but I truly, truly mean it because this gave me the opportunity to put together some of the things I've been thinking about in the last couple months while working in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, which hit Asheville, North Carolina, and the surrounding areas. And I've been consumed with that because that's where I live in Asheville, North Carolina. And so during this presentation, we're going to use this hurricane to go back and look at agile principles. If you're like me, I don't think about these agile principles that were created in 2001. I don't think about them on a day-to-day basis because managing projects is too chaotic. It's full of pressures hitting us in the face all the time. But I was able to watch these principles put to use by these teams who were working to help us here at Asheville, North Carolina, following the hurricane. Very high pressure, chaotic environments. I was able to learn from them, and now I've been given the opportunity to share it with you. So I do really mean thank you for this opportunity. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty, literally, because I've been working in dirt for the last 2 months, but also the nitty gritty of practical things you may want to think about. I'm going to give you some chance for time for reflection, not to make you feel guilty about what you or your team or your organization doesn't do, but maybe just think about some of the things you could do to improve ever so little, just something. And I'm speaking to everyone here. I'm speaking to the managers. I'm speaking to people who have power in their position title. And I'm speaking a lot to people who are more powerless leaders. So this presentation is especially for you. And again, my name is Lynn Mans, and my organization is called Fearless Change. So Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Helene hit the western North Carolina area in September of this year. It was the most destructive hurricane in North Carolina's history. The damage was overwhelming, and my house was among this damage, flooded and full of mud, and my beautiful little neighborhood was devastated. Some of these houses were flooded to the point where they were all the way to the roof. The water was all the way to the roof. And the water was so violent that it lifted the houses up off their foundation. Now, almost 3 months later, there are still many people without houses. There are still many roads. I heard almost 1,000 that are still not working. So it's a pretty harsh environment in this area in Western North Carolina right now. Now, that's not to bum you all out because we're all working hard here. And I want to tell you about some of the teams that are really working hard and what we can learn from them at a very different level than all of your teams that are in the workplace in their nice, clean environment. So, a little bit about me. Yes, I was a victim of this hurricane, but I don't want to identify as that. I am also the co author of the books Fearless Change and More Fearless Change. And these are books that capture successful practices in helping to make change happen in your organization. So that's me trying to get all the junk out of my house. Well, it wasn't junk, but it is now, and talk about a change. But I got first interested in fearless change because I was in the IT field and I was curious that people didn't got that people got this fantastic software, in my opinion, and they didn't want to change. They didn't like it. They whined, they complained, they made errors, and then complained even more. And so that's what originally got me interested in the topic of change. I have since discovered that over the 30 years that Linda Rising and I have been working in this field, that the strategies that we developed work for any kind of change, not just IT. So let me tell you a little bit about them. So it's relevant here because we interviewed people who are trying to make change happen. That's what we did to write the Fearless Change and More Fearless Change books. We actually went to people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and said, tell us about your best strategies. And from that, we created a toolbox of strategies that we call patterns that you, no matter who you are, can use to make a change happen. And we called them patterns because these are strategies we saw over and over and over again, that we heard about over and over and over again from different kinds of people. And so we say, okay, these fearless change strategies, I would love to say they just came from Linda Rising and me. No, we got this from just our hundreds and hundreds of interviews with successful leaders of change. And so we say these are the toolbox that you can use to help make change happen in your organization, your team, or in your life. And there's a copy of the two books, a picture of them. They also come in Japanese. We also have a version from our friends in China. So the books have been around and are still selling well because these are tried and true strategies that people have been using for years. So 30 years of work. Wow, I realize that's probably longer than some of you have been alive. Well, 30 years of work, I got to tell you, I keep hearing these principles over and over and over again. So you'll hear some of them in this presentation, and sometimes we need to be reminded of these things. All of these strategies, or I call them patterns, are in blue throughout the presentation. And they're for you, the powerless leader. So don't think of this as something, oh, this is what my manager uses or somebody at the C level uses. These are strategies anybody can use when they see a problem in the organization and they want to make change happen. Now, what was interesting, I'm going to apply these to what these teams did here at Hurricane Helene. So a little bit more about the strategies. You might be familiar with one of the most popular change models, and there are many. One of the most popular is Cotter's. Here's the 8 things you do. And the fearless change patterns give you the how. This model's great, but how do you create a sense of urgency? How do you create a guiding coalition? How do you develop a vision? How do you do all these things? That's where the fearless change patterns come in. The patterns that, again, we gathered from leaders of change. I like this slide because I include this in my presentation because people that use the fearless change patterns often say, yeah, they're great for that time when we go, oh, we're in this situation and we say, wait, I need a tactic here that I can use right now. This is these are signs, those of you that are from the area or driven through this area in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Although I live in Asheville, North Carolina, this is my hometown. And this is actually an area across the bridge, all these signs. And so you have to decide which way to go really fast. And that's sort of the way it is in the workplace, right? Something happens that you didn't expect and you got to decide immediately what to do. So for example, you're talking about something and you think this person is going to agree and you realize this person is a true skeptic and it's going to give you some resistance and some problems. Well, you can pull out the champion skeptic pattern, or you realize you're in a meeting and people are not agreeing with what you're saying and it's going south. You can pull out the trial run pattern. So that's where these are useful in those times of, oh, I need to do something quickly. So they're very tactical. One of these patterns is the group identity pattern. And this, in the group identity pattern, when we first wrote this pattern a good 20, 25 years ago, we said, okay, what we saw and heard from the people that were trying to make change in organizations is they kept telling us, we kept hearing this over and over again from different kinds of people. It's important for your group that's working on something to have an identity. And this identity makes them more visible in the organization. It gives them credibility. It creates something that others can talk about. What is that group doing and what you can talk about? it interests people in being involved. And so we said, okay, we've heard this so much. It seems to be an important strategy, a pattern for helping to make change happen. So we included it in the book. And this is two pictures from our Fearless Change app that we have for both the Android and Apple. And so this is what we saw as a group identity. And then Helene hit. And here's the groups I'm going to talk to you about today. These are the groups who came in after the hurricane to help us dig out the flooded material and mud in our houses. Don't look anything like what you see in the workplace. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of pictures of these teams because my hands were very muddy too, and picking up my phone was not a priority. So as I look at these pictures and the other pictures I'm going to show you, I didn't get a lot of pictures of the women who were in there with their hands very dirty. But there were, trust me, a lot of women and a lot of men who came to help us. So there's me with the group that helped muck out my crawl space. And there's a group in my neighborhood on the bottom left. You can see some of the houses that are still standing in the background. So I want you to imagine that you're showing up to work with high pressure. You go, yeah, well, that's normal for me. You don't know who else will show up to work. What? You don't know who has what skills. What? Your management is inexperienced. Well, unfortunately, that may be the case, but these people were really inexperienced. No defined processes, nothing scrummish or sprintish, nothing. They just showed up. And they certainly never heard of capital A, Agile. But as I'm going to show you, since this conference is Agile to Agility, they definitely exhibited qualities of agility in a unique way that I believe you can take back to your teams. So hang on here with me. So this is how they showed up. They showed up. This is the road that comes into our houses. You can see it's pretty much washed out. And they walked in. They came in on the back of trucks. They came in on convoys of trucks. They were ready to hit the ground running when they came in. We never knew who would show up. They were highly motivated. There was a new self-organizing team every day. We didn't know who would show up, and there were different people every day who were trying to form a team at 9 a.m. in the morning. They were inexperienced. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We have no experience in this. They arrived from all over the U.S., so we never knew. So it was really fun. That part was fun. We got to meet all kinds of people from all over the U.S. They didn't know their other team members. They worked in short time box periods from 9 a.m. to about 4:30 every day. They had an idea of what they needed to do, but not how. And they were very diverse. And this is what I really want to drive home. I saw political stickers that did not agree with my political beliefs. And yet when they walked in to help me drag my refrigerator out, they saw all my political stickers on my refrigerator and no one cared. We worked together. The point is, this was their group identity. They had t-shirts and all, and they were self-organizing teams every day. Doesn't this sound interesting? And yet they got stuff done, a lot of important stuff done. So here's not such a great picture, but these, you could just see some yellow shirts. These are people working to drag out some of the stuff out of one of the houses in my neighborhood. So they did have this identity. Some of them, there were different teams, and different teams wore different colors. But again, the teams never knew who would show up on their team. So while they had different names, the people on the team were different every day. What do I believe made these teams effective? They got stuff done. They had a commitment to purpose. They had continuous improvement, and they believed in that as a way to work. They were self-organizing, and it worked. They didn't just use that word. It worked. They were great at client collaboration. They embraced change. It was a constant. And they definitely had sustainable development. Now, if these look familiar to you, these are some of the principles. I won't talk about all of them, but I'll talk about all 6 of these. But these are 6 of the 12 principles in Agile development. You go, yeah, I kind of forgot about those. Well, just to remind you, the manifesto for Agile software development: add individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. And what's real important is this manifesto says it's not that the things on the right are not important. They just believed when they wrote this and that was in the early 2000s, that the things on the left are more important. So keep that in mind. And these were their 12 principles. And I won't read them all here, but these are some of the things that I'm going to discuss today. So as I discuss these, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you to think in the background. In an effort to be agile, have we lost sight of the agility mindset as defined in the principles? There are 12 principles. I just blasted them up on the screen. You could Google them. I'm going to talk about a few of them today. Are we blindly following processes and using tools rather than focusing on the principles that define how we work together? That's just a question you can have in the background. I'll be asking you other questions along the way. Again, not to be judgmental, but to give you all an opportunity for some reflection time. What minor changes can I start to make in my organization towards this with more agility? So, these teams, again, I'm using these teams as an example because they've been such an inspiration to me in my search for trying to be more agile. Each of these teams had a mission. We could call it values, we could call it purpose, we could call it vision. I'm calling it mission. Whatever it is, we know that our companies have these brief, clear, memorable statements that helps guide our purpose and our activities. I know every company I've ever worked for has had these. Could I repeat it? Did I buy into it? Most of the times, not. But somebody said today in the presentations, this is supposed to be our unity of purpose. Unity of purpose. Sorry, I don't remember who said that, but that's great. But yet, in most organizations, it's not. In these organizations, it was. That allowed them to communicate, to attract talent, and to guide their decision making. You're going to see this in the examples. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of this. One group you may be familiar with, Samaritan's Purse. We respond quickly when natural disasters strike, deploying an army of volunteers to come alongside homeowners to bring relief and compassion in Jesus' name. That was theirs. Again, we had probably a dozen different teams. I'm just going to give you an example of 2. Here's one that's very different. Rubicon, serving communities in need wherever they are. We get SHIT done. So completely different on appearance mission, yet they were all doing the same work. And that just seemed, everybody was attracted to that mission. They knew their mission. It was very clear that they knew their mission. So this is the first thing that struck me, is all those years I've worked in organizations and didn't know the mission and didn't buy into the mission. What was happening there? These people were so enthusiastic involved because they believed in the values and the mission and the vision of their organizations. So in the fearless change pattern we have for that is elevator pitch. Can you recite your mission, your values, whatever you want to call it. When I do workshops and I ask the people in the workshops to define their elevator pitch that they want to use for their project, it's really hard for them to do this. We spend a lot of time on this. So you can develop your mission or your values or your vision for your project. And then people should be attracted to that. And if they're not, perhaps they should be on another team. It sounds so simple, but I'm just telling you, it really isn't. But in this case, these people were truly attracted to it. And that's what made them work so hard. So perhaps we might want to ask ourselves, I can think of one particular company that I did work with, great company. I left it because I realized now that I wasn't buying into their mission. So I hope you'll ask yourself, does your team have a mission, values, purpose, or whatever you want to call it statement? An elevator pitch. Does everyone buy into it? Do you use it to attract new talent? Does it truly guide your work? What are your distractions from your mission? So even projects can have a well-defined elevator pitch that people can recite, and you can review occasionally. I've done this with projects that I've led. Every couple of meetings, we say, okay, let's be reminded of our elevator pitch that we're sharing with other people, our group identity that we're sharing with other people. Does everybody agree to it? Is it still relevant? So this can be right at the micro level, the team level, the project level. So in the case of these teams that came to help after Helene, everybody understood their elevator pitch. Everybody bought into it. Everybody used it in decision making, and it was useful for bringing people on board because everybody that showed up did buy into it. So it really gave me a new appreciation for this silly thing I've heard called mission statement. Not so silly anymore. So I just ask you to reconsider that, even at the team level, even at the project level. What is your elevator pitch for what you're doing? And are people buying into it? The second thing was a term we've already heard today, the continuous improvement. And this is exactly the way the Agile Manifesto principles described it. Now, as you look at this, it talks about working software. Now, they were not doing working software. They were trying to get these houses in a better shape than they were in when they came at 9 a.m. than when they left at 4 p.m. So these people were professionals at time boxing. Short time box period of time, breaking down a large project into manageable chunks and delivering results in rapid iterations. Wow. You should have seen them work. The projects they had were huge. They walked into neighborhoods that were pretty much almost leveled. And they just concentrated on what they could do between 9 and 4. They were masters at these two patterns in fearless change called baby steps and small successes. I never saw a group get so excited about the little things they did. They had such messes in front of them and such horrendous situations with crying clients. And yet they got excited about the baby steps they took and the high fives that they gave to each other when they took these baby steps. At one point, I was walking past my railing on my deck, and I noticed that one of the railings was hanging out. Now, my whole house is a wreck, but I noticed that one of the railings is hanging out. And I had a few of the team members behind me, and I took my hand and went boom, and just pushed it in that railing, and it stayed. And I said, all right, so one thing's done. And they all cheered, and I said, now there's an example. I'm one step closer to this house looking better. I pushed in that railing. So I think that's a nice analogy. Get excited about even just pushing in the railings. They learned and did what needed to be done. So here's a person who, one of the people that was mucking out my crawl space, I'm sure he didn't look a day over 20 years old. He had never mucked out a crawl space before, but he was willing to get in there and learn and do it. So I was impressed with that. They were willing to learn. They had a culture of learning and they respected each other's mistakes. Okay, there'll be somebody else to fix it. All work was valuable. I would talk to this older gentleman in the group who said he was having a hard time. And so he just decided to sweep away some mud so that some rocks, some pretty pathway rocks could be seen again. Now there was mud everywhere, but he got very excited about the fact that these rocks could now be seen, the pathway rocks. And people were giving him a high five. That looks so much better. That almost looks normal. So all work was seen as valuable. And they asked for help. So you have people in there, inexperienced people, and nobody comes to a team perfectly experienced in everything. When we wrote the ask for help pattern, we said, you know what? We recognize through the many stories we heard that some cultures kind of look down on an ask for help idea. You know, the people would ask for help. But here that was celebrated. You don't know what to do. Thank you. You're asking for help. There's somebody that'll be here to help you. So they helped each other. It gave me a new appreciation for ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. So I ask you some questions. Here's your questions for reflection. Does your team use baby steps and time for reflection? Do you take time to celebrate small successes? The beautiful thing in celebrating small successes, when we wrote this pattern, one of the leaders we interviewed said, it allows you to look back and get excited about what you've done so far rather than depressed about all you still have to do. So it's a way to keep the motivation up. And I thought, really? Yeah, but I'll tell you what, it really does. Are all contributions seen as valuable, worth a high five? Do you have an ask for help culture? Or do you look down on people who ask for help? We saw that. I'm sorry if you're seeing it too. Is learning supported and mistakes accepted as part of the learning process? Well, I hope that's true. So here's just some questions to think about. Just some questions. Again, not to make anybody feel like they, like, gee, that's not us. Just some things to help you think, well, maybe we can improve. So the third thing is self-organizing teams. And there it is, right out of the Agile Manifesto. So these teams were definitely empowered to make decisions and delegate work. And a self-organizing team, they track and report their progress, reducing the need for managers to assign work, check statuses, and verify that everything is done. This was the true definition of that. Little top-down management. It was funny. One time I knew the manager of this one team was named Leanne, and one time I said to one of the people on the team, "Where is Leanne?" And he looked at me and goes, "Who's Leanne?" They didn't even know who their management was. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but that just shows they were still getting things done because new leaders constantly emerged. They were pulling down my wallboard and it was like, hey, how do I run this particular piece, this particular tool? And these other leaders came and helped this person. Motivational energy came from the mission, the client, and it built an emotional connection to the work. So when another speaker was talking, I posted a Harvard Business Review article called How to Motivate Your Problem People, the link. You can Google it because it's an old article and it's easy to find it. So this is a really good article that talks about how to motivate from within. And this is what was happening a lot. These people were emotionally connected to their work, primarily because they followed the mission or the purpose or the values, whatever you want to call it, and the client. They were so excited about the client, which I will talk about in a minute. So a time for reflection for you. Self-organizing teams. Does your culture encourage new leaders to emerge? How does your team create an emotional connection to the work? Whoa, that second question's a hard one, isn't it? Because I'm talking about creating an emotional connection to helping people move back into their houses someday. That's not really, you might say, is not the same level as software development or whatever your particular organization does. But still, I challenge you to think about what are the ways that you can help your team members create an emotional connection to what they do. This seems like a great question for just sitting after work over a beer or something and discussing that. Different for each group. So, as one things you could do is say what drives our people and what blocks these drives and what would happen if these roadblocks were removed. Those are three questions that can start you on the path to thinking about how to get people to develop emotional connection. What drives the people? What blocks these drives? And what would happen if these roadblocks were removed? These groups were extremely connected to their work. Client collaboration, probably my favorite because I was the client. So here I am with a team that of some of the people that were from the Pennsylvania area where I'm originally from. It was very interesting. They had a personal touch with all the people who they were working with. Every day they did an introduction ritual. So when they started to work on my house, we all got in a circle and everybody introduced themselves to me. And I was like, wow, we're taking the time to do that. They asked for my story. When did I buy this house? How long have I lived in it? They wanted to know about me. And they always did face-to-face communication. And we definitely co-created. At one time, they came in and made some recommendations for me. And I thought, no, that's not what I can deal with today. They were okay with that. Definitely co-creation. And this was really interesting. They kept thanking me for the honor of working with me. Do you believe that? I felt like I should get down on my knees and thank them. And they were just constantly giving me sincere appreciation for allowing me to work with them. Do you imagine if you did that with your clients? So they focused on my expectations constantly. And I just wondered, this was a new way of working with clients in my mind. And I'm going to think more about this when working with clients in the future. And what was interesting is they allowed me to provide the motivational energy. I provided the motivational energy because I was there all the time, most of the time, but I was always talking to them about my story and my sadness and my needs, and that motivated them. Now, I'm not saying your clients can do the same, but I'm just saying that it was interesting to see how my involvement actually motivated them more. So I ask you, what personal touch do you use to get to know your clients, understand their story, truly keep them as part of the team, and express sincere appreciation for the honor of working with them? Just a thought. Another, this is right from the Agile Manifesto, embracing change. The biggest changes, remember, these team members changed every day. They had to deal with new people. When you came in at 9 a.m., there were different people than were there the day before. Maybe some were the same, but people came and left, and yet they adjusted. They were professionals at just do it pattern. The just do it pattern says you never know everything, so don't wait until you do. Just take a step. Sense the environment, as one of the previous speakers said. They always focused on providing value. Just as the Agile Manifesto says, when you have a chance to change, look at it as a chance to provide more value. So when they came into trying to do one thing, which was my subfloor, and I showed them my walls that had leakage that wasn't there the day before, they immediately changed paths on what they were going to do that day. So they said, this is what's going to add value today. Wow. In a team of people that they didn't even know. Just amazing to watch. So I ask you, how do you and your team move forward when facing incomplete information? How do you react to change? Do you see it as an opportunity to improve the final product? How often do you shake up your team with new members and ideas? These questions are not to make you feel like, oh, I don't do any of those, but to just give you some thoughts. Maybe there's a little something we can do to improve. And finally, the last one, sustainable development. This quote is exactly from the Agile Manifesto, as you see it on the screen. And there's one of the teams their truck was there, and I just snapped their picture. These groups hit the ground running no matter where they go, even though their team members change. Talk about sustainable development, and they know what to do. What is that about? I think what it's about is at the end of every day, they sit around and take time for reflection with all their team members. What went well? What didn't go well? I also think it's because everybody buys into the mission, the vision, whatever you want to call it, their elevator pitch. And here's something controversial. I think that they have sustainable development because they have no processes specifically that I saw. They use the principles. Now, I'm not saying you should do this because you're in a very different environment. I'm just saying, remember that the Agile Manifesto says the principles and people over the processes. So it doesn't mean processes aren't important. It means that something else might also be important to think about. So please don't go around thinking, oh, she just poo-pooed the processes. You need those. But maybe in the process of looking at the processes, we forgot the principles. So your reflection is, rather than adding more tools, process, certifications, etc., might your agility efforts be more sustainable if you simplify down to the principles? Might. I say this as a consultant myself. This is really crazy for me to be saying this. But again, I raise this question. In an effort to be more agile, have we lost sight of the agility mindset as defined in the principles? So remember, these were the kind of teams, and this is what they were able to produce. They are not exactly like your teams, but there is something we can learn from them because they got stuff done. So I'm going to quickly go through these. This is what I saw in these teams. The power of a mission and people buying into it. The power of baby steps. Even though their projects were huge and overwhelming, they celebrated their small successes to keep the motivation going. I know of one company in the area who recently told me they start their Monday mornings like this, celebrating what they did the week before. Just, with a high five, yay, extra cup of coffee. Using a personal touch to truly understand your client's story. They truly understood me. A sincere appreciation for your client as motivational energy. I motivated them, even though I didn't realize at the time. Encouraging new leaders to emerge, new evangelists to emerge. Fearlessly seeing change as an opportunity to create value. A group identity in which team members contribute new ideas, new energy and ideas. A culture in which ask for help and learning is celebrated. A time for reflection to build sustainable practices. Creating an emotional connection to the work. Hard, but a great discussion question. And finally, not ignoring the processes, but getting back to the agile principles. What were they? I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago who is very involved in agile. And I was telling him about this presentation, and he goes, "Oh, agile principles. Yeah, let me go back to those." And we shared screen, and we reviewed them, and he says, "Oh yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about those." So just no matter what you're doing, you might want to review those a bit. So with all the tools, methodologies, etc. out there, have we lost track of these? I just ask. Maybe we haven't. Maybe you haven't. but I know I have. This watching these teams work allowed me to go back to those and see what I've learned from those. See what I still have to learn from those. And I point out the processes and tools are still important. They're on the right side. The individuals and interactions, the customer collaboration, or maybe add value to, according to the Agile Manifesto. It allows us to involve agility, not just capital A. So if you're feeling overwhelming with all this, and this is what you're probably thinking, yeah, we could do a lot of those things. We could do a lot of those things. Well, here's what you might be feeling. So I encourage you, as many other speakers have today, to take the baby steps approach at the micro level with yourself, with your team. Just start small. I have been working in this area of change for over 30 years. And if there's one thing I'm totally convinced about, is that big changes start small and happen small with this baby step, time for reflection, small successes, baby step, time for reflection, small successes. Patiently, small. And this is what's known as a trial run. And just on a personal note, this is exactly the method I'm using to rebuild my house and help rebuild my neighborhood. It's going to take years, years. And yet I'm celebrating every baby step and small success and trying to encourage others in the Western North Carolina area to do the same. That's the only way we're going to get this done. So if this sounds like a lot, this is my favorite quote. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I encourage you to look at some of those questions. You'll have the PDF of this presentation and pull out one of them, two of them, those questions for discussion among your team members. And I also encourage you to look at my website where you'll get other ideas. There is an opportunity for a fearless journey exercise, which I'll be glad to talk to you about how you can start if you're feeling like, I don't know where my team can start. And most of all, I just want you to know that after years of working in change, I can see people take one baby step at a time and just make amazing changes in their self, in their team, and in their organizations. So I hope it works for you too. Thanks so much for listening to me, and thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. And this is great. And we talked before just how powerful the story that you shared, and I love how you integrated it with agile principles. So very relatable, and thank you for sharing your story. Like somebody said in the chat, it's very nice to see principles applied outside and how they're applicable. So thank you again. We might have a time for one question, maybe. Technically, we have 1 more minute, but I don't know if anybody has a question for Marilyn, or we can take a break before our last session with Steve. So any questions? Anybody have anything for Marilyn before we take a
I
break?
love to talk about change. So any questions, and I can't see the chat, so I can't answer the questions there.
Yep.
So.
No, everybody's just thanking you for a presentation so far. So I haven't seen any questions.
Well, they can also, the fearlesschangepatterns.com also has a way to contact me. There's a contact place, and I answer all my emails. So, and please connect with me on LinkedIn. And you can see the other things that I do and the other free things that I do. So
Great. Well, thank you. And yeah.
thank you for giving me this opportunity. So it's a very different than any other presentation I've ever done. So I really thank the teams too that came in and worked in the mud. Because that's probably what a lot of us do on a regular basis. We work in the mud, and I learn from people that really do work in real mud here. So thanks to the teams, even though they can't hear me.
Yep. No, with they definitely got my respect. So it's really nice to just see like some of the things that you said, like, the appreciation for you as a, in their instance, client, and just the whole story, I think was, it resonated with me, and I'm sure it resonated with others. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for this great conference and all the speakers too. I've enjoyed all the speakers up to this point. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's one more. It's crazy how quickly it's flown by. We have Steve Pereira and as a closing keynote. So we'll take a 10-minute break, and then Steve will share with us his case study. So
And I
uh,
also remind people that there will be a PDF of all, and they'll be able to see all those questions that I put up there, so they can take those questions back to their team and then work on them if they want.
yeah, there'll be PDF, there'll be recording of this. So yeah, maybe if you don't get a chance to upload your PDF to chat here, just send it to me, Marilyn, and I'll make sure that everybody has a link to download the presentation.
I just realized all the sun on my face here. Oh, wow.
The sun moved, yeah.
I'm not at home because I can't live in my house, so I'm in this kind of situation here.
I know that's another experience that you mentioned, like you're at your friend's house and you can't go back to your home, which is
Yeah. I
another
just
part of the reality that.
yeah, I just did a talk on change, the search for normal. And that's really what I'm doing right now. The change. Change involves the search for normal.
Yeah. Yeah, I was telling you, going through a civil war in Bosnia, where we ended up in the United States, and leaving our house and family and friends is it kind of hit home when you said that, because I, as a kid, experienced some of that, and it's not easy. It's not easy going through that type of change, but it makes you stronger. I think whatever all of
But
these experiences.
each piece of normal is a baby step. So each piece of normal that I can find is a baby step. I find a piece of normal and I go, yeah, all
Yeah.
right. But thanks again.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, we got a few more minutes. I'll maybe play some music, and then we'll get started again. So thanks again, Marilyn.